A lot of people don't have like a very open relationship with their bodies. And so when I work with them on like that physical sense that you're talking about, it's really just creating an awareness to physical reactions.
Mhm.
Like when you say that, like, does your stomach turn in knots? Does your head get really fuzzy? What feels good to say and what feels like really bad to say? What feels good to do and what feels
Mhm.
bad? People have like this really mainstream idea of like what movement is, that you have to go to the commercial gym and
Mhm.
do like a workout split and do cardio. And I mean, I've had clients like get into birding, like just go and like watch birds, but like it's like a miniature hike because they're outside.
Hmm.
And that's like what physically feels good to them. And they get vitamin D, they create a community, they do something interesting, they add a hobby. So like the physical side of it is just learning how to identify like what's going on in the first place.
What's up, you beautiful beasts? I'm Katie. I'm on a mission to help humans become their favorite versions of themselves and to strive for overall health by healing their relationship to food and exercise, healing their relationship to their body, and most importantly, healing their relationship to themselves, all without ever having to step on a scale. I have had the privilege to talk to all kinds of different humans who have been through a plethora of experiences just being a human and existing. I believe that every single time someone shares their story, at least one person listening will learn from it, be inspired by it, and maybe, just maybe, even change the entire direction of their life. These are the stories of humans unveiling their beautiful beast. Keep listening. This is the Unveiling the Beast podcast. So, can you tell me and the listeners a little bit about who you are and why you think you are who you are?
Yeah, so I'm Stephanie Townsend. I am a LMSW about to get approved for my LCSW test. And so in social language or social work language, that's like the final licensure in the state of Georgia. It's like terminal, like the highest you can get without going back for a doctorate. So I work in own my practice in the state of Georgia. I specialize in trauma, and by proxy, I see a lot of eating disorders and ADHD and depression and anxiety. And I always say, like, to whoever asks, like, what got you in therapy was like my own therapist. When I was a teenager, I went through, a fair amount of trauma as a kid, and my therapists are the direct reason as to why I'm here today. And I kind of view it as like a pay it forward kind of thing. If I can give anyone like an eighth of like what my therapist gave me, I've done my job. And so that's why I am who I am, because of what I went through, but also because of like the healers that I had in my life.
I love that. So, you specialize in trauma.
Mhm.
Um, I'd like to open up the conversation about micro traumas, because
Yeah.
that's a new concept that I'm learning myself, like micro traumas and micro griefs. So, that's just what was on my heart today. So, can you
Yeah.
talk about micro traumas and what they are and why people can actually miss them as trauma in their life?
So, and the funny thing about language and micro traumas is they're probably like not micro at all. But what
Right.
happens is it's just like, oh yeah, like I never thought that that would happen. So it's what I kind of describe as micro traumas as like the tiny bits of communication or you know negative interactions that we have with people that's like prolonged. So
Mhm.
obviously, like not everyone's trauma is like the big like events that we see like in television or movies or things like that, where people kind of think, well, no, I wasn't traumatized because like my parents didn't like beat me or, I wasn't homeless or whatever. But the micro traumas that I think that you're talking about is more of like the emotionally absent parents or more of like the emotionally like non-available or like the neglect side of things where maybe like it was like a fine childhood, but the child was like left alone to like figure out life.
Mm-hmm.
Communication like wasn't really great. When there was communication, it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great. Like a prolonged sense of a lack of care. And like whatever that is, it can be like the emotional care, the physical care, spiritual care, whatever that is. So no, it's not like the big scary stuff that we see, but it's like over time, like I'm not getting my needs met.
Yeah. I know for me, my thing has always been like comparing myself to
Mhm.
somebody who has it worse. And so therefore I can't acknowledge that this thing was traumatic for me. And that's one of the big things I've learned over this. I've done a lot of work over this last year, and I, yeah, I'm a different person. And one of the things is I would be like, well, this can't be trauma because this person over here is like an example you gave, living on the streets. They're homeless. They don't have anything to eat. I have a home. I'm under a roof. I have food in my fridge. I have a loving family. So this thing can't possibly be as bad as that thing.
Mhm. Mhm. And something,
Yeah.
and I hear that like so often, like especially like in my
Mhm.
intake sessions, they kind of like end up in my office and they're like, well, I think I should try therapy because I just like don't feel good, but I don't understand like the point of like going back because my childhood was fine. I was on the streets. Um, and that's really like not what matters. And I tell clients all the time, like comparing yourself doesn't heal any part of you that hurts. Comparing to others doesn't, fix anything. All it
Mhm.
does is kind of like recreate the childhood or recreate the circumstance that we were in that made us feel like alone or abandoned or hurt at the time. That's all it does is recreate it and make a bigger wound.
Yeah. I don't know why this just popped in my head, but I don't, did you ever watch Ally McBeal? I might be aging myself, but
I don't think she sounds really familiar, but I don't think so.
so one of the episodes she was just going through a lot of stuff and somebody said, "Why do you think all your problems are more important than everyone else's?" And she goes, "'Cause they're mine." And I was like,
That's correct. That's correct.
"Boom."
This is my problem, my world. Like that's
Yeah,
okay.
'cause they're mine. I don't know why I thought of that, but um so are you open to sharing your story about your own trauma and what led you, and you don't have to if you don't want to, but what
Yeah,
led
yeah,
you to
absolutely.
actually seek out some help? Okay.
Op Open book. So I'm actually like I still have a therapist. Every therapist should have a therapist. And so this is still a lot of stuff that
Mm-hmm.
we talk about in like my sessions too. But I grew up with an alcoholic father. And that just presents like individual issues like within every family. Like every alcoholic father is different. My parents did split when I was young, and I think that they tried to do like stick together for the kid kind of thing. Um,
Yeah.
and by the way, for whoever's listening, that typically doesn't work out. If you want to leave, just leave. But it typically harms more than helps. But he, struggled with alcohol and he had his own demons and stuff like that. But because of that, my mom was left to deal with managing him
Mm-hmm.
because there was like a lot of violent tendencies and things like that. And so this isn't like any shade to my mom, but there wasn't like a whole lot of like emotional engagement as a kid. And I was an only child. And so I was honestly just kind of left to my own devices for a large part of the time. And I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until I was 30 because of that. And I mean, again, like not blaming my mom at all. It is what it is.
Right.
And, so that was like, I guess, the foundational part of my trauma with the alcoholic father, because, one day he would be completely like emotionally available, and the next day it would just be like a raging terror. And then, there's times where he's there and other times where he's like not there for a few weeks at a time. So pretty inconsistent parental care on that end. And then as I got older, we kind of moved around a little bit, and I kind of suffered with some suicidal ideation as a teenager. And then as a teenager, I was also sexually assaulted. And I'm actually very privileged in the sense that my assailant went to prison, is still in prison 15 years later.
Nice.
He got a life sentence, and I couldn't be more grateful to the judge because of like the nature of how everything was done. It was the judge was pretty horrified. So it was that's like a lot of like my story. Obviously, you and I could probably sit and talk for about 6 more hours to get into the nitty-gritty of it.
Yeah.
But mostly like, addiction and sexual abuse were like the foundational points. And of course, there's like other things that get added onto that. But that's like the gist and like maybe like the main bio of like my story.
Mm. And so was there like a point where you were like, I need to seek out help? Or was it just kind of like, this thing happened to me, I'm going to go seek out help? Or did you hold it in for a while? I know a lot of people are afraid to do that, um, just to ask for help in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think at 14 I knew how to ask for help, or really at any age. I don't think I knew, and that's why like I did like the self-harm and the suicidal ideation. But again, my story is like one in a million in terms of like the sexual abuse. Like when it all came out, I was immediately sent to this facility that did like free therapy for sexual abuse survivors,
Okay.
which and 2008, like my parents like were in construction, so that completely like wiped us out. So that was like a true blessing for us. That was something that was available to us. So I did therapy not because I asked for it or because my parents even thought about it, because they didn't do therapy either. But it was assigned by like the legal personnel in the case. And it was through there that I was able to like work through like the suicidal ideation and the self-harm. And yeah, I never asked for help. It was kind of given to me. I
Mm.
was blessed with it.
Yeah,
And I definitely like created a language to learn how to ask for help, but that was something I was like really blessed with.
that's awesome. But yeah, like I said, so many people don't ask for help, or they think that they have to be completely broken to ask for help, or, so many other reasons. Um,
Absolutely.
so I wanted to ask, I'm in the health space and not in the terms that we're used to where I'm going to tell you what to eat and how to move. It's more like I'm going to
Right.
help you heal your relationship to yourself and your relationship to food, your relationship to exercise. And I incorporate all different aspects of health, like sleep, healing your
Yes.
mental,
Yeah.
your healing your mind, pampering yourself, decluttering the space around you to declutter your mind. And so, um, when you help your clients, trying to figure out how to ask this, when you help your clients, maybe talk through or release or whatever, some of their trauma, how does it affect their physical being? Does that make sense? Did I word
Yes,
that
it's
okay?
absolutely. And it's funny because like I kind of consider myself like a somatic therapist. I really lean heavily into like the physical reactions that clients are getting or patients are getting like in session, and like
Mhm.
asking them to identify it. So another part of my story is I have suffered with like various types of eating disorders and disordered eating, ranging
Mhm.
from like binging to purging to just full on restriction and like the food noise and things like that. And so part of like working with my clients is a lot of like lived experience as well. So when you're talking about like the physical sensations and kind of like the physical reactions to change, um, I would say about like 90% of my clients are highly, highly, highly self-aware. Like they already know the issue, they know what's going on, they just can't figure out how to change it. And so when I start asking them, like, hey, when you say that like really difficult thing, like what did your body just do? Because I
Mhm.
saw like your hands and like you kind of rocked a little bit or like you tucked in. What did you feel
Mhm.
just now? And they were just like, I don't know. So I would say a lot of people don't have access or don't have like a very open relationship with their bodies. And so when I work with them on like that physical sense that you're talking about, it's really just creating an awareness to physical reactions.
Mhm.
Like when you say that, like, does your stomach turn in knots? Does your head get really fuzzy? What feels good to say and what feels like really bad to say? What feels good to do and what feels
Mhm.
bad? Because like with the movement and decluttering and things like that, I think people have like this really mainstream idea of like what movement is, that you have to go to the commercial gym and
Mhm.
do like a workout split and do cardio. And I mean, I've had clients like get into birding, like just go and like watch birds, but like it's like a miniature hike because they're outside.
Hmm.
And that's like what physically feels good to them. And they get vitamin D, they create a community, they do something interesting, they add a hobby. So like the physical side of it is just learning how to identify like what's going on in the first place.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that you mentioned that too, because so many people think that exercise has to like thrash their body. And
No.
specifically, like I was into CrossFit for a while, and there was this workout, I think it was called the
Hmm.
Angie, and it starts with
Yeah.
a 100-mile run. Scratch that. It's not a 100-mile run. A 1 mile run and ends with a 1 mile run. I think that's the one the Angie. Anyway, and that was probably the first workout I've ever done where I was crying at the end because I hurt so bad. And at the same time, because I was still in that disordered thinking, I was praising myself. Look what you just did. And at the same
Right.
time, like sobbing because my body hurt so bad.
Right. Right. I think I've done that workout too. Maybe it's a different one. I don't know. It's the one Murph. It's a 100-mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, 100-mile run.
Uh-huh.
It's done like Labor Day and 4th of July and stuff. And I've done that one a few times too. And there is a really fine line that you walk between like, look what I just did, and like, do I just feel like shit right now?
Yeah.
Uh, and so it's asking that question of like, yeah, you can be proud of yourself, but are you going to do this again tomorrow? Like, are you excited to do this tomorrow?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's cool to like push yourself every once in a while. But for for me, at least in that time, and like the listeners have heard me tell this story, I was teaching 9 spin classes a week and
Wow. Okay.
eating like no more than 1,500 calories. And I wasn't losing weight. And I thought something was so wrong with me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what do you do when you're not losing weight? You add more, right? So that's when I added CrossFit 3 times a week. And I was just thrashing my body all the while thinking something's wrong with me because I wasn't losing weight. And I didn't understand the concept of adaptation yet. I just, because I
Mhm.
wasn't
Mhm.
educated in human movement yet. And so, yeah, yeah, you're supposed to feel, in my opinion, you're supposed to feel better after you do
Yes.
your
Yeah.
daily movement, not like you want to die and cry on the bed.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is like something so important because especially like with like the gym influencers and things like that, everyone's like, oh, like come destroy my legs with me and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But these people feel better and you may not, and that's okay.
Yeah. And to that point, that's why we have to find what we like to do,
Mhm.
um, and not worry about how other people perceive what you're doing, if that makes sense. Like, for example, I saw a thing once, it was supposed to be a meme and it said, Zumba, bitch, I lift. And I was like, what? Like, why? Like, congratulations, you lift. And congratulations, this person does Zumba. It's what you like to do. So figure
Yes,
out what you like and don't put yourself down that you don't like the things that other people like.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, can you tell me a little bit about your experience with an eating disorder?
Yeah. So like in middle school and high school, it was like a lot of like restriction and binging and things like that. And that was like obviously like also around like the primary time of my abuse, and things like that. And it was looking back at the pictures, I'm like, why did no one ask me if I was okay? Like
Mm,
my prom pictures, like, or not my home, it was my homecoming pictures. I was like wearing a dress that, um, I've always been like big chested, but like like my chest, like the whatever this is, like you could see the bones and like my chest was like sunken in.
mm.
And I'm like, why? Did no one check? No one asked questions about me? Like,
Yeah.
and I would like pass out often, like in school, because I just wouldn't eat all day. And then I was in marching band on the drum line, and in the summer, like band camp and stuff like that. It's intense within its own right. And I would pass out pretty often, and practice and things like that too. I was always weak. I was always like fuzzy headed, and I wouldn't really eat until the evenings. Um, and so that was like a really, really long journey. And I really didn't actually, again, have like the language for that until I got into college, because it went from like restriction to binging because I ended up in like a abusive relationship like in college too, and binging like was the only thing that felt good, right? Because
Mm,
food can create that comfort for us. Like the day could have been like really crap. This person, it made me feel terrible about myself, but there's nothing better than sitting with fast food in front of the TV and just like decompressing from the day, right?
yeah.
um like if I can't have a good life, I can have a good meal, kind of thinking. And there was just one day I kind of like woke up and was unhappy with not like my body, but just how I treated food. And
Mm,
I started I went back to therapy for that as well. And I would say over the past 6 years is when I would kind of consider like myself like most healed from my eating disorders. I still kind of like bounce back and forth from my food noise and just kind of like old habits, but I catch them at like level 1 versus like level 47. So,
yeah.
yeah, so it was pretty much like starting from middle school, probably to like mid 20s, like late 20s.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, did you have a reason for not eating, or was it just kind of this habit that you started? Like, were you trying to change your body? Did you have, you know, all of
Yeah,
diet culture
yeah.
screaming in your
Oh
ear?
God,
And yeah.
yeah. Like, so they released a study now, and I'm sure it was different back when you and I were younger. But now that just children have access to technology so immediately, uh, social media affects young girls and body image as early as the age of 6, which I think is terrifying. Because at
Yeah.
6, I could specifically remember not having a thought about my body. It was, but that was also like a different setup. But um, at that point, it was like a lot of comparisons to like other girls. Like I felt like I never really quite like fit in a lot. And like
Mm,
the girls who did fit in were skinny and pretty and did cheer and stuff like that. And these girls like never like gave me a hard time. Honestly, I wasn't really bullied or anything like that. I am blessed in that respect. And so, but it was like to try to fit in, but also on the other end of it too, is there was so much out of control in my life that was like the only thing I had a choice in.
yeah.
So I had a choice to make my body look a certain way. I had a choice to eat or not eat. Like that was literally the only thing in my life at that
Mhm.
point that I could control.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm glad you mentioned the social media thing too. I finally decided to join the TikTok party the other day. And some of the I was just messing with the app and I came across my face on the screen with a filter on it that I didn't put on and I went and then I touched it and it took it off and I was like and so I had this sudden not sudden like but just this understanding of how people can see themselves in that filter and then
Correct. Yeah.
try to portray that to the world. I even showed my husband, I was like, look at this. And he's like, what am I looking at? And I was like, you can't tell, but it has a filter on
Hmm.
right now. Watch when I turn it off. And he goes, oh. So not that like there's anything wrong with my face. I'm almost 40, but it was so real and all also not me at the same time. It was so weird. Not that I haven't played with filters before, but just seeing that realistic of one yesterday,
Oh
I was
yeah.
like, I can
Yeah.
totally see how people get addicted to these, to A, the people presenting themselves with these filters, and then B, the people trying to look like these people with filters when they're trying to look like something that doesn't exist.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I think you and I are probably like a little bit more used to like the early like Snapchat filters that were just like really crappy and like obviously
Yeah.
fake. Now it is
Yeah.
like, like Facetune in an app. It's just so immediate and there like if you like you said, like you said, if you present that way full time on social media and you look in the mirror, there's like a huge gap. And it's not that person's fault. You just don't look like that. No
Right.
one is born Facetuned.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've even heard the argument, which is valid, is that even people who wear makeup, like I love wearing dark makeup. I've always loved it.
Hmm.
It's like the rock star look. Even that, in a sense, is a filter.
Absolutely.
And I try to present myself in all of my fashions. Like I'll put a gym video up with no eyebrows, no makeup, nothing, just so that people know this is who I am too. So
Absolutely. I mean,
I'm
yeah,
not
like
always polished and
I get that. I don't do anything important without my lashes. I get it.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm not bored with like 3-inch lashes, but it is one of those things where it is like that balance to get both because I don't lift in lashes. I don't live in lashes. But it is like there's a stark difference between like presenting like you and like never coming to terms with you like through
yeah,
filters.
yeah. So I have one more question for you, and I ask everyone at the end of every episode, and that is if you had one piece of advice that you could give to the world, what would it be?
Um, I, I have two, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
I, I s- I say this often, especially like within the space of like eating disorders and body image and like general health, is you cannot hate yourself into self-love. Thankfully and frustratingly, the brain is simple in the way of if you create a neural pathway through like one specific thought, it will just follow that pathway. Nothing in your brain is going to register the need of like the 180 flip. So if you're practicing self-hate, self-loathing, or self-dislike, or anything negative towards self, you're not gonna beat yourself up so much and like get the result that you want and then be happy with yourself. That is just not how the brain will work. You will have your dream body and you'll still hate yourself. So in terms of like releasing the responsibility of yourself, practice self-like, practice self-love and just see like what happens. If it's new for you, it's going to feel fake and it's going to feel wrong, but new doesn't mean bad. It just means different. And so you'll have to kind of find like your own version of self-love, but don't expect to engage in one action and get another. You only get to like your body, like yourself, be happy with your life if you practice some general self-like now. Um, that's way easier said than done. And I recognize that, but I think that sometimes we can like back ourselves like into a corner with that. And the second part is like find your own version of healing. I kind of say like therapies for everybody, shop around for a therapist. You're not really supposed to fall in love like with the first therapist that you find. If you do, that's great. But therapy is a lot like dating in the sense of I didn't marry the first person I went on my first date with. Thank God. And so it is okay to heal in other ways other than therapy. It's okay to heal through therapy. It's okay to um, try different types of therapy. Like I'm a somatic therapist. I don't really give you a lot of skills. I don't give you a lot of like, things to try. A lot of the work we do is like in session of like body contact, but try that. Try like a skills-based therapist. Try a therapist who considers them eccentric. Try like life coaching. Try, building community. Anything that feels like your brand of healing. it's okay to have like your own brand of healing and have it evolve and develop and change over time. You don't have to follow like the mainstream version of healing that's often presented today.
Beautiful beasts, Stephanie Townsend, signing off. Until next time.